Hey guys, tonight we start with the loud, smoky, and a little sticky world of the old tavern. It was the hidden center of every town. It was the secret place for news. And it was the only place a knight, a farmer, and a singer could all get very drunk and also get robbed. It was more than just a place for drinks. It was a place where danger, fun, and sickness all mixed together under a straw roof. So before you settle in, please like the video and subscribe, but only do it if you really like my work. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is for you. It is always interesting to see who is with us from different parts of the world. Now, make the lights low. Maybe turn on a fan to make a soft, quiet sound. And let us begin our trip for tonight. You have walked slowly through a muddy street. It smells like a mix of horse, smoke, and strange soup. It is raining, of course, or the rain just stopped, so everything is wet and slippery. This includes your only shoes. You're tired, you're hungry, and a cart full of turnips almost hit you 2 times. You need a drink. So, how can you find a tavern in an old town? There are no bright signs, there are no online reviews, and there is definitely no GPS. What you have is your hearing. Just follow the sounds. Somewhere after the blacksmith shop and the man selling fish who is yelling about his fresh river eels, there is a sound of laughing, shouting, and a person singing loudly about a goose. And there it is, a bent wooden building. It leans a little as if the building itself has had too much to drink. Above the door, a wooden sign hangs. You can barely read it. It has a rough painting of a barrel, or maybe a bear, or maybe both. No matter what, this is the place. Welcome to the tavern. The front step is slippery with ale. You push open the heavy door with iron hinges. It makes a long and loud creak. The sound is so big, it could be its own show. Right away, warm air and a strong smell hits your face like a drunk person's handshake. It smells of smoke, wet wool, old beer, and unknown meat. You are here. Inside, the ceiling is so low that tall men have to bend down. Drunk men hit their heads on it. The floor is made of dirt. I do not mean it feels like dirt. It is really dirt. But a person has put straw on it to try and make it look clean. It is not cleaner. There are no private tables. There are no waiters with lists of food. And you cannot have a quiet talk. This is an old tavern. It has only 2 modes, loud or closed because of a fire. You see an empty spot on a crooked bench near the fire. But it is wet. You do not ask what it is wet with. A person close by is arguing about a stolen chicken. Another person is asleep with a big spoon still in his hand. A dog with one eye chews on a bone under a table like he pays to live there. And my friend, this is only the entrance. You just got here, and it already feels like a night you will remember, or one you will try to forget. As the heavy tavern door closes hard behind you, the dark feels like a wet wool blanket around you. It is warm, not comfortable, and a little strange. Your eyes slowly get used to it. Candlelight moves on the dirty walls. It makes shadows dance. The shadows make the chairs look like they might start a fight. The fireplace burns brightly in the far corner. It is used for heat and is also a fire danger. Smoke floats slowly in the air. It does not really go out the chimney. The chimney might have a dead bird stuck in it. But the thing that affects you most is not the sound or the heat. It is the smell. The smell of an old tavern is not nice. It is like a bad memory. The main smells are ale. It is warm, sour, and spilled on every surface. Under that smell is sweat. Years of sweat from people, horses, and maybe a magical animal. Add a little bit of old bread, wet straw, and a faint smell of boiled onions. Now you have a mix that no perfume maker would ever try to make. The tables have years of names, rough pictures, and knife cuts carved into them. They shake with a kind of stubbornness. The benches make noise under the weight of muddy boots, thick coats, and bad choices. The floor is dirt, like I said, but it has layers of straw on it. The straw is supposed to soak up spilled drinks, spit, and sometimes a person who has passed out. You walk with care. One bad step and your foot goes into something with a texture you should not think about. The group of people is like a living thing. Loud laughter comes from one corner. In another corner, two men argue about how much a pig costs. A woman slams her cup down so hard that half her drink spills, and nobody even moves. A man at the table next to you looks at you with a confused face. He is either thinking very hard or has forgotten how chairs work. A person nearby sneezes. Everyone on the left side of the room leans away together. And still, even with all these things that shock your modern mind, there is something friendly here. The tavern is full of life. It is rough, real, and has no filter. It is the old version of a town center, but without being clean and with 400% more shouting. You find your seat. It is a little wet. It might be cursed, but right now, it is your seat. At first look, the way the tavern is set up looks like a person put the furniture in place during an earthquake and then just left it. There is no plan, no bar section, no nice seats in the back. There is just a messy spread of tables, benches, barrels, and sometimes a wooden box used as a seat. Everything is either too close or too far away. It depends on how drunk you are. The fireplace is the only real main feature. A big open fire burns hard against one wall. It does its best to give warmth, light, and a good amount of smoke inside. People gather around it for comfort, like insects with cups. The people with the best seats get all the warmth. The people without seats, well, that is why they have ale. The bar, if you want to call it that, is usually just a thick piece of wood on top of two barrels. It bends under the weight of jugs, cups, and elbows. Behind it is the tavern keeper. He does many things at once. He pours drinks, yells orders, and gives the man in the corner a very mean look that says, "You still have not paid for last Tuesday." There are no lists of food. You ask what they have and get ready for the answer. The answer is usually ale, or be quiet and wait. A narrow staircase, maybe the first one ever built, and for sure full of splinters, goes to the rooms upstairs. If you look closely, you can see a boot hanging from one of the stair posts. Nobody knows if it is for decoration or as a warning. Some taverns have a back room. It could be for keeping things. It could be for games that are against the law, or it could be where the last person who said something rude to the barmaid was taken and never seen again. It is better not to ask. The walls are dark with smoke from candles. The windows are covered with greasy cloth or animal skin, and every surface has been cleaned very well by the elbows, boots, and spilled drinks of many past years. And maybe a chicken. Somehow, with all the mess, or because of it, the place works. Everyone knows where to go, how to sit, when to shout, and when to bend down. It is not orderly, but it is full of life. Every old tavern has a boss, and it is not the town leader or the man who collects taxes. It is the tavern keeper. This person might not wear a crown, but do not be tricked. This person is in charge. They are part chef, server, money counter, child watcher, and the one who delivers justice in the bar. The tavern keeper is a whole system in one person. and they do not accept any foolishness. If it is a man, he is probably built like a barrel with arms. He is old, in a bad mood, and looks like he is made of dried meat and poor choices. If it is a woman, and it often is, she is smarter than a sharp tool. She can make a room quiet with just one look. Either way, they have seen it all, heard worse, and cleaned up blood from the straw before their first meal of the day. They say hello to regular customers with a head nod. They look at new people with doubt. And they deal with people who cause trouble with a cup to the head. Behind the bar, they remember who has paid, who still owes money, and who has had 3 drinks too many. And they do this all without writing a single thing down. This is because not many people in old times could read. But the memory of a tavern keeper is frightening. The tavern keeper decides the mood of the place. If they are in a good mood, the place is lively. If they are in a bad mood, you should drink quickly and not tell any jokes. They are the decider in every argument. They are the judge in every cheating problem. And they are the first one to pick up a club when a fight starts. You do not cause trouble with the tavern keeper. They also know everything. Who owes money? Who is having a secret love affair? Who came to town with a fake name? If you need information, you pay the barkeep. If you need to be safe, you sit near them. If you need a favor, you better hope you did not break a cup last week. Some have a helper. It could be a son, daughter, spouse, or a child with no parents that they took in. Now they make this person carry barrels that are twice their size. These helpers bring drinks, clean floors, and try not to spill anything or have drunk people step on them. So, while the tavern might seem like a mess to you, it is actually a very carefully balanced place. And in the middle, in charge of everything like a storm god with an apron, is the one person who keeps the ale coming and stops the roof from falling down in a big fight. That person is the tavern keeper. So you finally sit down on a noisy bench. You move away from elbows and spilled stew. Your throat is dry, your boots are wet, and it is time for the main reason you are here, the drink. But do not expect a list of wines or a clean cup. This is an old tavern. Your options are few, not cold, and maybe life-threatening. Let's start with the usual drink ale. It is not filtered, not treated with heat, and usually made in the back room where the dog sleeps. It is thick, not clear, and often has little bits floating in it. These could be pieces of grain, yeast, or maybe a part of the last customer's mustache. It is not cold because there is no ice, and you do not ask how long it has been in the barrel. You just drink it and hope for the best. Next is mead, a drink made from honey. It sounds nice, does it not? In truth, it is sweet, strong, and sometimes it can explode. If the tavern keeper made it, it might be tasty, or it might taste like bad choices and be poison. It is usually given to rich people, people at weddings, or that one singer who wants to be paid in gold or mead. Then there is cider. It is made from apples that were either just picked or fell on the ground 3 weeks ago. It is sharp, tangy, and served in broken cups that might be used for soup in the morning. It is the main drink in areas with many apple trees, or for people who want something just strong enough to forget the smell of the person sitting next to them. Wine? Yes, they have it. But unless you are in the south of Europe or with rich people in town, it is probably mixed with water, gone sour, and given to you with a mean comment. Good wine is for lords, bishops, and the trader who just sold 12 crates of salt. And water, that is a brave choice. This is because half the time it is full of tiny things that can kill you. Boiling it uses fuel, and clean water sources are not common. That is why even kids drink ale. It is not to get drunk. It is to avoid dying from sickness before age 8. Nobody is measuring drinks or making fancy cocktails here. You drink from cups made of wood, clay, or tin. Some of them still have last night's stew in them. You lift your cup, smell it, and take a sip. It is warm, it is bitter, and somehow it is perfect. Because in the old tavern, if it is wet and does not kill you right away, it is a very good drink. So, you made it through the drink? Just barely. Now your stomach makes a noise. It reminds you that you have not eaten since the sun came up, and your last food was mostly grain and sadness. It is time to eat. But do not get your hopes up. There is no list of food, no waiter, and for sure, no one asks if you have any special food needs. You do not order food in an old tavern. You ask what is still available. Then you hope it is hot and only a little bit strange. The main food on the tavern table is usually pottage. It is a thick stew made from whatever grains, vegetables, and strange meats were available that day. It has been cooking in the same pot since Monday, and today is Thursday. New things are put in every day. Nothing is taken out. It is not really a meal. It is more like a food time machine. If there is meat in it, good for you. It is probably rabbit, pigeon, or the unlucky chicken that got too close to the fire. If it is meat from a wild animal, it might be delicious. Or it might be too old and cooked with a feeling of hopelessness. Your bowl is made of wood or clay. Your spoon is either one you brought or your fingers. Most people have their own knife, so eating is a bring your own spoon and fork situation. And do not expect paper towels. Just use the sleeve of your shirt or a shared cloth that has seen things it will never tell. Bread is also available. It is hard, dark, and heavy. It is more like a tool for fighting than a food. If it is soft, it was made today. If it is hard, it was made last week. Either way, it goes well with cheese that smells like an old boot and has started to have its own life. Sometimes there is salted fish. Sometimes there are pickled eggs. Once in a while, you will find a tavern that has a special meal. That is just a better way of saying, we had too much of this stuff. Taste is not guaranteed. Texture is hard to guess. Still, in the moving firelight with noise all around and the warmth of food in your hands, it is not so bad. It fills you up. It is hot. And if you do not think too much about what is in your bowl, it might even feel nice. You are not here for fancy food. You are here to eat like someone who is trying to stay alive. Once you have your seat, and hopefully it does not have a knife in it, you begin to see the real show, the people. An old tavern is the first social media. It is loud, messy, half-true, and everyone shares too much. On your left, there is a farmer with a red face. He is already on his 4th ale. He is telling the same story again about his cow having a baby sideways. He hits your shoulder in the middle of his sentence. He acts like you are an old friend or a good replacement for the pig he usually drinks with. At the other end of the room, a stranger in a hood sits in the dark. He drinks his drink slowly. He might be a monk who ran away, or a robber, or just not good at looking at people. Either way, you do not start a conversation with him unless you want to vanish behind the horse stables. Near the fire, a soldier in old armor is telling a group stories about a fight. His story has dragons, French people, and a sword that can talk. It is definitely not true. Nobody minds. His cup is full, and the people listening are laughing. There is a trader, loud and sweaty. He is yelling prices for grain that nobody asked about. He takes gold coins from his bag like a man who wants to be robbed before morning. Two local men play dice on a bent table. They look very serious. One of them is clearly cheating. The other one knows and does not stop him. He is probably waiting until his ale is gone to start a fight. A singer plays music in the corner. His voice breaks on the high parts of a love song. It sounds a lot like a song he just created. Nobody cares. He is wearing pants and he is singing in the right key. That is already an improvement from last night's singer. Women walk through the crowd. Some work at the tavern. Others have their own jobs. They are smart, sure of themselves, and you should not mess with them. They will flirt, laugh, or punch you in the teeth based on how you speak to them. Children sometimes run between people's legs. They take leftover bread or coins. Nobody stops them. It is just part of how things are. Everyone is looking, drinking, making plans, and acting like they do not see the man who has fallen under the table. This tavern is not just a place to eat and drink. It is a show that is happening live. And tonight, you are one of the actors. For a minute, forget about lutes and songs. The real music of an old tavern is not a tune. It is a collection of messy sounds. It starts with the sound of cups hitting each other, dozens of them hitting wood to celebrate, to make a deal, or because of a drunken mistake. Some make a happy sound. Others break into pieces. Both are met with loud shouts. Then the laughter comes. Big, loud, deep laughter that sounds like it came from a wild pig. Most of it does not make any sense. A farmer laughs at his own joke about hay. A knight laughs at the word pottage. A monk laughs without stopping every time a person says, duck. You learn very fast not to ask why. Voices talk over each other. Each one is louder than the one before it. They are all trying to be heard, like chickens in a pen. There is arguing, telling stories, shouting about taxes, and at least one person using holy words wrong to win a bet. The bartender yells orders while hitting flies. A barmaid yells at a man who tried to touch her. And a person keeps saying, "Another drink," like it is a call to battle. And in the corner, the singer with a half-tuned lute and 3 broken strings plays the same 4 notes over and over. Sometimes he starts singing about lost love, found chickens, or rich men who put their pants on the wrong way. Nobody really pays attention unless he starts to sing about a person in the room. Then things get very fun or very scary. A person spills a drink. A person burps so loud the ceiling shakes. Another person falls off a bench and continues to talk from the floor as if he meant to do it. In the background, dogs bark. A goat makes a sound. Why is a goat here? And chairs move across the dirt floor. It sounds like thunder in a wooden cave. It is not quiet, but it has a strange beat. Sometimes the room becomes silent, not on purpose, just a sudden pause. It lasts for exactly 3 seconds. Then a person farts very loudly and the music begins again. This is not just noise in the background. This is the tavern's own heart beating. It is raw, loud, and always full of life. If you listen very carefully, it begins to make a kind of sense, a sort of beautiful sound made from mess. And just like the rest of the tavern, it just gets louder the longer you're there. Once the ale begins to work and the stew begins to digest, the tavern changes. It is not just a place to eat and drink anymore. It becomes an old casino, but without the nice ropes and with a lot more shouting. Gambling is the main activity of the night, and everyone plays, from old soldiers to boys with no shoes and dice they borrowed. There is no dealer, no manager, no rules. just a broken wooden table, a few copper coins, and the small chance that a person is about to lose their pride. Dice are the most popular game. They are made from bone, wood, or whatever was available. They make a loud noise on the tables like thunder rolling. Every throw is followed by a mix of happy shouts, sad sounds, and claims of magic. Nobody believes the dice are fair. Everyone plays with them. Then there are cards. If you are in a nicer part of town, they are thick, painted by hand, old at the edges, and always missing one or two. The rules change depending on who is telling them. Sometimes you are trying to get the biggest number. Other times you are trying to match pictures or just making rules as you play. It is like poker, but with more hitting. Bets go from money to cups to animals. Yes, a person is betting their goat. Another person bet his boots. And another person bet his own freedom for the night. A secret for you: he lost. The regular players are good at it. They mix the cards fast, roll the dice slowly, and smile a little too much. They are cheating, of course. That is half the enjoyment. A hidden die here, a marked card there, a strange cough when the winning player leans close. If you win a lot, you buy a drink for everyone, or you might get attacked. If you lose a lot, you smile, act like you wanted to lose, and slowly move your chair back towards the door. Other games start up too. Arm wrestling, thumb fights, and the very popular game of who can drink the most without passing out. The winner gets claps. The loser gets to sleep under the table and a headache that stays until the next market day. But even when the rules are not clear and the bets are silly, the feeling is exciting. Because in an old tavern, luck is not just a game. It is a risk with your money, your pride, and maybe your pants. As the night gets later and the tavern gets warmer and more humid, a new kind of show begins. This one is made of words, music, and confident lies. This is story time, the old way. A singer clears his throat in the corner. He softly plays a half-tuned lute. The strings make a sound like old boots. He is missing some teeth, but he is not missing any confidence. With a big move, he starts singing a song of a broken heart and bravery. It is about a knight who loved a mermaid and died in a noble way while saying a poem. Nobody thinks it is true. Everyone still listens. That is how it is here. The truth is not important. Being entertained is everything. At the tables, other people start to talk too. Not singers, just customers with courage from ale and a story to share. One man says he once fought a bear and is still alive to drink and talk about it. Another man says he saw a witch change a cow into a goat. A third man says he is related to a great king through his mother's cousin. Every person's story starts with, "You will not believe this, but," and they are correct. We do not believe them, but we want to. Bragging becomes songs. Mistakes become legends. A person tells a joke so terrible, it becomes funny again. Another person says a poem that he probably stole from a monk's paper. The room claps, shouts, or throws bread. It depends on how good or how much of the show there was. If you are lucky, a professional storyteller or musician might be in town. These are people who go from town to town. They trade music for coins, food, and sometimes a bed inside. Their songs are better, their stories are longer, and their skill at making a crowd excited is risky. But even they know the main rule of tavern stories. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. In this smoky room with the fire making noise and the cups splashing, telling stories is not just for fun. It is a custom. It is a way to connect. It is how you make friends, enemies, and sometimes a drinking partner for life. By midnight, half the tavern is acting out the story of the knight with one leg who fought 6 robbers with a big spoon. You laugh, you cheer, you forget it is all not real. Because in an old tavern, every liar is a hero if the story is good enough. As the night gets later and the ale continues to pour, something in the room changes. A kind of bravery that comes from drinking. The singer is in the middle of his 3rd song about cheating shepherd girls. And all of a sudden, everyone feels romantic. Welcome to old-style flirting. Being quiet and careful has gone away. It begins with looking at someone, or at least with one eye, looking through a haze from the mead. A man with only 2 teeth left leans over a bench and says with slurred words, "My lady, you shine brighter than the fire." She throws a piece of bread at his head in reply. The room claps. Others try to be more gentle. They offer more drinks, say awkward nice things, or offer to carry a bowl of stew so it does not spill. A secret for you, it still spills. If you are a woman in the tavern, a worker, a guest, or a traveling trader, you are probably used to pushing away at least 3 men who think they are poets, 2 arm wrestlers, and 1 man who tries to impress you by putting a knife on his nose and balancing it. Sometimes it is successful. Usually it results in a black eye or an empty money bag. For people who are really looking for a partner, taverns have more than just flirting. Women who sell their company work the room with skill. They know who has money, who is charming, and who will fall asleep before reaching the stairs. The deals are quiet, but what they mean is loud. Angry lovers. Oh yes, nothing starts a tavern fight quicker than a stolen look, a hand that goes where it should not, or a husband who sees his wife laughing a little too much at the singer's joke about bishops. Tables are flipped over. Cups are used as weapons. A bench is broken in 2 again. And still, in the center of all this mess, real feelings happen. A shy baker's daughter and a traveling man who works with stone laugh while they share stew. 2 drunk farmers connect over their shared dislike of turnips. A monk accidentally flirts with a nun. Love, or something similar to it, can be found in even the loudest places. Because in the old tavern, romance is a mix of charm, luck, and not putting your face in your bowl in the middle of a sentence. You might win a heart. You might get a slap. Either way, you will remember it, or at least someone will tell you about it the next morning. It was going to occur. Maybe a person spilled a drink. Maybe a person said another person was cheating at dice. Maybe 2 people wanted the same bench, and neither would move. Or maybe a person said something about another person's mother. Goat or soup. It does not really matter. All of a sudden, it is happening in the tavern. What was once a mix of music and cups changes in a second. A stool is thrown. A cup smashes on the floor. A person yells, "Hold my bread," and jumps over a bench with the elegance of a drunk catapult. No one is shocked. In fact, most people do not even stop drinking. A bar fight in the Middle Ages is not unusual. It is normal. It is almost a special feature. And while it seems scary, it is usually more funny than fatal. People swing their arms without aim. They miss, they fall, and they land in a person's food. Hair is pulled, beards are grabbed, shirts are ripped. The tavern keeper yells like a general on a battlefield. He holds a big spoon in one hand and a club in the other. Sometimes a person gets into the fight without knowing why. They just saw some action and jumped in with their fists ready. Others make secret bets, cheer, or move their cups away from the splashing. Weapons are not common. Most people are smarter than that. Taking out a knife in a tavern can change a simple fight into a huge tavern story. And nobody wants to be forbidden from the only place that has hot food and warm ale. In the end, a person falls to the floor and does not get up. Another person walks into a wall and decides that is a good spot to sit and think about his choices. The fight ends like a tavern candle, suddenly and with no big announcement. And this is the weird part. Once it is done, it is done. The fighters are pulled apart, cups are filled again, a person starts a song, and in 10 minutes, everyone is laughing again. This includes the man with the bleeding nose. No bad feelings, no legal actions, just cuts and bruises, stories, and maybe a new nickname like One-Eyed Arnold or Benchbreaker Bill. Because in an old tavern, a good fight is just a part of a good night. It is messy, silly, and strangely makes people feel closer. And if no one is hurt too badly, it is just another form of entertainment. So, the fight is finished. The singer has fallen asleep in the middle of a song, and your stomach is full of strange stew and slightly alcoholic cider. It is time to sleep, or at least try to. But do not think you will get a soft bed and nice-smelling sheets. This is an old tavern, not a fancy hotel. If the tavern has rooms, they are probably up a noisy staircase. Upstairs, you walk past floors that are not level and wooden beams that are low enough to check how strong your head is. The rooms are tiny, cold, and you must share them. There is no privacy. You are sleeping shoulder to shoulder with people you do not know. Some snore as loud as church bells. Others talk loudly in their dreams in languages you have never heard. Beds. Really, most are mattresses filled with straw. They are thin, bumpy, and have what old-time people called friends crawling in them. You lie down with all your clothes on, boots still on, and a knife under your pillow. This is not for feeling safe, but for a plan to defend yourself. Blankets are for everyone, and so are the smells. And if a person ate garlic before, and a person always ate garlic, it will be a close part of your dreams. If you are too poor or too drunk for a room, you sleep downstairs on a bench, under a table, or just in a corner near the fire. You will be curled up next to a dog that might or might not be the tavern's dog. You will be stepped on, probably sneezed on, and may be used as a place to rest feet. The tavern is never completely silent. Even after the last cup is empty and the last fight is settled, there is always a person talking in their sleep, a piece of wood making a loud pop in the fire, or a distant fart that sounds through the room. And somehow you fall asleep. It is not pleasant. It is not clean, but it is safe enough. The fire keeps the worst of the cold out. The tavern keeper stays awake with one eye open and a club in his hand. And the noise turns into its own kind of soft song. It is familiar, human, and full of life. You will wake up with a stiff neck, a dry mouth, and a bruise you do not know how you got. But for a little while, you sleep with travelers, bad people, farmers, and silly people. No kings, no quiet, just snoring, straw, and the small hope that your boots will still be there in the morning. The sun comes up like a guest who was not invited. It sends pale light through the gaps in the window covers and touches your eyes with a mean touch. The tavern looks different in the morning. Not exactly more quiet, but quiet in a sad kind of way. You open one eye. A person's boot is on your chest. Another person is talking in their sleep about sheep taxes. The singer is snoring under a table, holding his lute like a person he loves. A chicken walks across the floor, eating the bread pieces from yesterday. Nobody asks where it came from. The fire is almost out, making the room cold and smoky. A few people start to move, making sounds like hurt soldiers from fights that happened only in their heads. One man sits up, looks around, and then lies back down. He has decided that today is not a good day to get up. The tavern keeper is already awake. Of course they are. They are making noise with cups, putting straw into new piles, and warming up something in a pot that smells both good and a little bit like revenge. They look at the people on the floor, then hit a big spoon on a cup like a morning alarm from a bad place. Get up or get out. That is your wake-up call. There is no big breakfast meal. If you are lucky, there is more pottage. It is now even thicker than last night. Bread is warmed up again. Ale is mixed with water, and no one is strong enough to say anything bad about it. Some people just put their heads in a barrel of rainwater outside and say that is how they stay clean. You check your money bag. 2 coins and a button. It is better than you thought. Your boots are still here. One of them has a mark from a bite, but they are yours. That is a good thing. A few new people come in. They are people who wake up early, travelers, workers who need a drink before they deal with animals, taxes, or even worse, their neighbors. The tavern starts to get busy again, like a big animal slowly waking up. A person starts to tell a story from last night again. It has already changed, of course. Now there were 2 fights, and the bar song called a ghost. Everyone nods as if it is true. The night was a mess. The morning is sleepy, dirty, and full of bad feelings. And still you smile because somehow you got through it. By this point, you have felt the sweat, the smoke, the sticky ale on your boots. You have made it through the yelling, the flirting, the pottage, and maybe a bench that was thrown. And after all of that, one thing is very clear. The old tavern was not just a place for drinking. It was the living center of the town. In a world with no phones, no newspapers, no social groups online, the tavern was the place where news was shared. A trader from the sea could tell stories from a faraway place. A soldier could talk about the war from where it was happening. A singer could sing songs that brought people together, even if the words were different every night. This was a place to connect. Farmers drank next to skilled workers. People on a holy journey shared bread with robbers. People who did not know each other became friends, or at least friends for drinking before the second drink. Here, the lines between rich and poor were not clear. Stories were started, deals were made, and anger was forgotten or made worse, depending on how the dice fell. The tavern was also a place for business. Deals were made, and hands were shaken over broken wood and spilled cider. It was a place for justice, a place to share secrets, and a stage for shows all at the same time. You could get a job, lose your money, get married, or begin a long fight in just one night. And it gave you something else too, something you could not get at the market or ask for in a church. It gave you a break from the cold, from work, from the constant hard work of just living in old times. For a little while, you could sit by a fire, hear a bad joke, sing a worse song, and forget for a moment how tough the world outside was. Even if the ale was warm, the bed was itchy, and the food had more bones than liquid. The tavern made you feel like you were alive with other living people. And in a time when anything from sickness to war to a cold winter could kill you without notice, that was a very important thing. So when you went into an old tavern, you were not just getting a drink. You were getting a feeling of belonging, a story, and maybe, if the floor was not too full, a spot to sleep where the fire was still on. Because a long time before there were cafes and pubs and coffee shops, there was the tavern, loud, dirty, truthful, and something you would never forget. Before she became the most famous face of old Egypt, made lasting in a stone head with high cheeks and a look of calm strength, Nefertiti was a woman full of secrets. Her name means, "The Beautiful One has come." But nobody knows for sure where she was from. Some people think she was the daughter of a strong Egyptian man named Ai. Maybe she was even the sister of Akhenaten. Other people say she was a princess from another country sent to Egypt to get married. Where she came from is not known, but her power is known. Nefertiti showed up in history like a flash of light. She was sudden, bright, and she changed everything. She came into Akhenaten's life not as a quiet queen, but as an equal partner in a time that would change Egypt's religion and culture. Together, they would take apart old traditions, get rid of all the gods, and make the sun disk Aten the only true god. It was a very big and almost forbidden change. And Nefertiti was not just sitting on the throne and watching. She was leading events, giving gifts to the god, and even shown in pictures hitting enemies. This was a job usually only for male kings. Other queens were kept in the background. But Nefertiti was always there. She is in more art from that time than even Akhenaten. In these pictures, she is not shown as being less important. She stands tall, sometimes very large, holding power in her hands. And in a place where kings were seen as gods, her closeness to Akhenaten, in both spirit and politics, made people think there was more. Maybe she was not just a queen. Maybe she was a co-ruler. But this rise in power caused problems. Egypt was not prepared for the big change. The old priests were angry about losing their gods and temples. The main city was moved to a new city, Akhenaten, now called Amarna. This cut the connection with the old ways. And through all of this, Nefertiti was there. Her image was cut into stone walls. Her name was in songs to the sun. But even though she was seen so much in life, her death is a total mystery. There is no tomb, no body, no sure story of her end. Just quiet. It is like history showed her greatness and then suddenly decided to stop looking. And maybe that is where her story really starts. To know how Nefertiti got her power, you first have to know the man who changed it all. King Akhenaten. He was not given that name at birth. His first name was Amenhotep IV. He was a prince who was supposed to follow a 1,000-year history of gods and ways of life. But something inside him changed. Some people call it a message from God. Others say it was craziness. When he became king, he turned away from the powerful god Ammon. He said there was a new truth. There was only one God to pray to, the sun itself, the Aten. This was not just a change in religion. It was like an earthquake that broke the foundation of Egyptian life. Think of a society made around temples, priests, and holy acts being told in one night that their gods were not real. Their prayers were useless. Akhenaten did not just talk about one god, he made it the law. The temples of Amun were closed. His name was cut off of buildings. Statues were broken. Whole cities were left empty. In their place, Akhenaten made something new. Akhenaten, a city just for Aten, where the sun would come up right between the tall rocks and cover the city in holy light. And through all this, Nefertiti was by his side, not as a quiet wife, but as a full partner. In the pictures from that time, she is shown praying to Aten with the same respect as Akhenaten. Their daughters are often shown with them, their heads looking up at the bright sun. It was a family picture that was not like anything in Egyptian art before or after. Even the way the art looked changed. It was not stiff and serious anymore. It was loose, stretched, and sometimes even close and personal. The king and queen kissing, playing with their kids, praying in soft clothes under the sun. Nefertiti was in all parts of this new world. Sometimes she was even more important than her husband. Some history experts think she had real political power. Maybe she even acted as a co-ruler. There are writings that call her Neferfroten. Some think she used this name when she started to rule by herself. It is not known if Akhenaten shared his power because of love, a plan, or because he had to. But it was obvious. Without Nefertiti, this big change might not have lasted as long as it did. But big changes are not strong. The gods do not like being replaced. And the people, they were watching quietly, waiting for the old ways to come back. At the time of her greatest power, Nefertiti had become more than a queen. She had become a symbol, not just of beauty, but of holy female power and royal strength. Egypt had had great queens before, Akhmos Nefertari, Hatshepsut. But Nefertiti's power felt new. She was not ruling from the dark or getting power by fighting. She was changing the spirit and culture of Egypt next to her husband in the moment, as a living goddess. She gave Akhenaten 6 daughters, Meritaten, Machartatan, Ankhesenparten, and others. They were all often shown in family pictures under the light of Eton. What is strange is that no sons were ever known for sure. In a kingdom that cared a lot about family lines, this was both a political issue and a history puzzle. Was it just how things happened, or was there another reason? Some people think Akhenaten might have had sons with other wives, or even more debated, with Nefertiti herself. This leads to modern guesses and strange ideas that are just guesses or are shocking. What we know for sure is that being a mother was very important to how she was shown. In art, Nefertiti is seen holding her children. Their small arms are trying to touch her face. These are not stiff, cold statues. These are real moments cut into stone. They are close, full of feeling, and bright. In a time when kings were often faraway gods, showing Nefertiti as a caring mother made the holy feel more human. But there was another part to how she was shown, a part that was much more powerful. In many pictures, Nefertiti wears the blue crown that was usually only for male rulers. She is shown hitting enemies, riding in chariots, giving gifts to the gods without Akhenaten next to her. These were not just symbolic acts. This was a queen doing the holy jobs of a king. It hints at a quiet but big truth. Nefertiti might have been getting ready for something more than just being a partner. She might have been getting ready to rule. Old stories suggest that after Akhenaten's health got worse, maybe because of family sicknesses or worry, Nefertiti started to do more of the ruling work. But this is where the records start to become unclear. In the last years of Akhenaten's rule, she is no longer seen by the public. No big celebration, no writings about her funeral, no Shire burial. Did she die when she was young? Did she lose her power? Or was she going to be something even more than a queen? Something that history tried to hide, but could not. One day, Nefertiti was in all places. She was cut into walls, praised in songs, and ruling with a king who was making big changes. And then, like a whisper in the desert air, she was gone. No old Egyptian queen had ever been seen so much. But around year 12 of Akhenaten's 17-year rule, the records become very quiet. Her name is not in the writings anymore. Her picture is not in the art anymore. No tomb, no news of her death, no sad scene. For a woman who was so important to Egypt's big cultural change, her disappearance is more than just weird. It is a big empty space in history. So, what became of her? One idea suggests the most basic answer. She died. Having a baby was dangerous, even for queens. Nefertiti's second daughter, Mecharten, also is not in the records around this time. This might mean there were two sad events. A mother and daughter died at the same dark time. But if that was the case, why was there no big funeral, no special mention, no temple? This was a woman who was respected like a goddess. A quiet death does not seem right. Others suggest something much more about politics. Maybe Nefertiti was not liked anymore. Maybe things changed in the royal palace. Akhenaten, who was more and more alone, could have pushed her aside. Maybe he chose another wife. Some people think a co-ruler named Smenkhkare, a mysterious person who is in the history records for a short time, might have taken her place. Was this a male son, a half-brother, or was Smenkhkare really Nefertiti with a new name? That is the most exciting idea. That Nefertiti did not go away at all. She changed. Some clues suggest a person named Nefernuaten ruled in the last years of Akhenaten's rule. This person used female words in writings and even talked about Akhenaten as her loved husband. Could this have been Nefertiti, made king in her own power? If so, she would have joined a very small group in Egyptian history, a female king like Hatshepsut before her. But even this idea fades away like sand. Neferuaten's rule ends suddenly, and then a more known name appears. Tutankhaten, later Tutankhamun, a boy king who would undo his parents' changes and bring back the old gods. If Nefertiti did rule by herself, it was for a short time. And if she was Smenkhkare or Neferuaten, she ruled like a ghost queen. She was only seen in small clues, half-carved names, and broken old things. A puzzle with the main piece gone. And so, just as fast as she came, the most powerful woman in Egypt goes away. But her story, that was just starting to form. As the dirt of Amanna started to calm down, a new person appeared. A boy king who was barely old enough to hold a royal stick. His name was Tutankhaten, later changed to Tutankhamun. And he would become the most famous king in the world. Not for what he did when he was alive, but for the valuable things found in his tomb that was never opened. But what is important here is this. Who was his mother? The history records are very frustratingly quiet. His father was almost surely Akhenaten. But who his mother was is still a big secret. Some experts say that Nefertiti was his stepmother. Others think she might have been his real mother. They point to art and the timing that seemed to show him as a young boy during her last times in public. If Nefertiti really was the mother of Tutankhamun, it would be logical. His early rule was clearly led by a person with a strong hand, and his choices to undo his father's religious changes may not have been all his own. And that is where the mystery gets bigger. Who was in charge during Tutankhamun's weak rule? The boy king was only about 9 when he became king. A child cannot fix a religious kingdom by himself. A person was working behind the curtain, a person with knowledge of court rules, religion, and public signs. Could it have been Nefertiti ruling from the dark? Or was it the high priest Ai who might have been her father? Or maybe both of them worked together to get rid of the mess of Amanna and bring Egypt back to its old gods. One of the most convincing clues comes from a golden box found in Tutankhamun's tomb. It shows a woman putting oil on the young king. A woman with a face that looks very much like Nefertiti. If that was her, it means she might not have gone away at all, but stayed in the center of power in a quieter way. Still, without a tomb with her name, without a sure mummy, we only have pieces. If she did guide Tutankhamun, her marks are on everything, but her name is not there. It was removed from temples, not included in lists of kings. It is as if a person tried to get rid of the memory of a woman who once ruled like a god. And still, the strange thing is that Tutankhamun's fame would bring back her image, because while looking for his story, the world found hers. For a person who was at the center of Egypt's biggest time of change, queen, priestess, maybe king, Nefertiti did not leave behind a known tomb. Not one building has her words about death. No coffin, no mask for her funeral, no writing that whispers her last words to the gods. It is like she just disappeared. This missing piece has bothered Egypt experts for more than 100 years. In a culture that cared so much about life after death, where every rich person was prepared, made into a mummy, and buried with rules for the soul's trip, how could one of the most powerful women in Egyptian history be gone? There are many ideas. One idea is that she was buried quickly and with no big event in the last years of the Amarna time. Maybe her big changes made her a danger to the new rulers. Her tomb might have been taken apart, her name ruined, as part of the big plan to get rid of the memory of Akhenaten's bad ideas. After all, the change back to the old gods was quick, and getting revenge in stone-cut letters was normal. Another, more interesting idea suggests her tomb was never really gone. It was just not identified correctly or is still not found. Some people who study this suggested that she is in the Valley of the Kings itself, hidden behind the walls of Tutan's tomb. In 2015, scans using radar of KV-62, the famous burial place of King Tut, showed there might be secret rooms. Was Nefertiti buried very close, closed up and lost under history and gold? This thought made people all over the world dream. A queen was resting so near yet so far. Experts on Egypt waited with great hope, but more scans were not clear. The digging became slow, the money ran out, and Nefertiti became a legend again. But we feel her being gone very strongly. We have many pictures of her, maybe hundreds. Her face is carved in stone and painted in colors. Her statue, now in Berlin, still looks out with deep grace through museum glass. It is like she knows a secret we do not. It is like she is waiting. Every year, new digging continues in Amarna and the valley. Every year, quiet talk begins. Could a closed room finally give up her secrets? Could a drawing and forgotten sand spell her real name? Or is she meant to stay a forever puzzle, a story about Egypt that does not end? If history buried her, it did not win for long, because the search for Nefertiti never really stopped. It only grew stronger. If her tomb was never found and her body was never known, why do we still remember Nefertiti? The answer is behind museum glass under soft lights in Berlin's Neues Museum. It is a painted stone sculpture that has amazed the world since it was found again in 1912. The bust of Nefertiti. She looks forward with calm and peace. Her long neck is lovely. Her blue crown is special, and her face is so perfect it almost feels new. One eye is not finished. Maybe it was left that way on purpose, or maybe it was a forgotten part during the workshop's last days. But even not complete, she is timeless, and you cannot forget her. The bust was found by a German digger named Ludwig Borchardt. He found it in the fallen studio of the artist Thutmoses at Amarna. When he wiped off the dust and saw her face, he knew right away what he had found. In his journal he wrote, "It is no good to describe it. You have to see it." And once the world saw it, Nefertiti became more than a person from history. She became a world sign of beauty, of power, of old mystery. But even her statue has its arguments. Germany got the object when laws about old treasures were not strong, and Egypt has asked for it to be returned for many years. To the Egyptians, she belongs at home in the land where the sun once touched her skin. She stood there under the Ten's rays. But Germany has said no. They say her weak state makes it unsafe for her to travel. Other people say it is about being important. Nefertiti brings in many people. She is, after all, their Mona Lisa. Still, her being here, no matter the place, has changed how the world looks at ancient women. She was not just a quiet beauty. Her statue shows a royal, sure, almost bold person. She looks like a person who held secrets, made choices, and changed the path of great nations. And she did. It is amazing how one statue, so delicate and quiet, can bring back a person lost to time. We may never find her tomb. We may never know how she died. But through this bust, Nefertiti did an amazing thing. She became alive forever, not in gold, but in the memory of people. The face may be still, but the story it tells keeps speaking louder than ever through the long years. Nefertiti's story exists in a place between stone and quiet. It is between what we know and what we want to think. Very few people from old history have made us so curious and so full of deep wonder. She is a puzzle. She was one of the most recorded women of her time, yet we still cannot fully know her. Over the many years, people have seen her as many things. To some people, she was a goddess in a human body, the living form of godlike beauty. To other people, she was a smart political leader, the power behind the king, or maybe even the king herself. Some have shown her as a romantic person, sadly lost in the sands of change. Others draw her as wanting more, even being cruel, guiding a falling nation with grace and careful thought. But what do we really know? We know she was more than a king's wife. Her pictures are as common as the pictures of kings. Her presence at religious events, royal parties, and even in war scenes shows a woman not just near power, but using it. In a world run by men, she made her own space. She did not do it by fighting back, but by being there, by being calm, by her strong control of the look and spirit of her time. We know she was at the center of one of history's biggest religious changes. Akhenaten may have thought of the one sun god belief, but Nefertiti was its living form. She was the human face of a godlike idea, the link between the Aten in the sky and the people on the ground. She did not just help the gods. She was their picture. And we know that after she vanished, her memory was almost wiped out. The angry reaction to Akhenaten's rule made her name disappear. Her statues were broken. Her writings were ruined. Her part in history was hidden on purpose. Yet here we are 3,000 years later, still saying her name in a low voice. Why? Because stories can live on where facts cannot. Because when a woman becomes both a famous sign and a puzzle, she goes to a place where time cannot find her. Because sometimes the questions are louder than the answers. And maybe, just maybe, that is exactly how Nefertiti wanted it. To be remembered, not explained. To be admired, not held. To live forever, not as a woman in one tomb, but as a queen of endless wonder. More than 3,000 years have gone by since Nefertiti last walked under Egypt's sun. Yet her shadow still covers our world. It is cut into museum glass, spoken quietly in school halls, and shown on the pages of books and on the screens of shows. Different from most people in history, she has not disappeared into the past. In fact, she gets bigger with time. There is a pull to her that you cannot resist. It is not just her beauty. We have seen beauty before. It is the mystery. The empty spaces in her life story feel like a dare, a tease. It is as if she is challenging us to try and know her, knowing well we never really will. And in that way, she has become more than a person from history. She has become a model. Every group of people sees Nefertiti in their own way. In the early 20th century, she was a foreign queen, full of mystery and quiet. In the women's rights movement, she became a sign of female power, an old ruler lost because of men's history. In today's world, she is a style model, an African queen, a political force, maybe even a pharaoh. She has lived 1,000 other lives, not through facts, but through imagination. But maybe that is the best life after death of all. In ancient Egypt, living forever was not just about making a mummy. It was about memory. If your name was said, your picture seen, and your story told again, you lived on. You could travel the field of reeds, eat with the gods, and exist after death. Nefertiti, by plan or by luck, has done that. Her name is said all over the world. Her face is one of the most known in human history. Her story, even in pieces, still gets our attention. So, in a way, her biggest gift was not carved into a tomb or sealed under desert stone. It was this lasting curiosity. She left behind a perfect puzzle, a life partly seen, partly erased, and totally unforgettable. And perhaps that was her last act of power. Not just to rule a nation, not just to change religion or raise royal daughters, but to become timeless. Nefertiti, the beautiful one who has come, never really left. She stays here in our questions, our wonder, and our need to remember the women history tried to forget. She lives not in gold or fame, but in the endless act of being looked for. And what is more lasting than that? In China, where the clouds hang low and the wind sings through bamboo trees, a dragon rests in a coil. But it is not a story, not a beast from old tales that breathes fire. This dragon is made of dirt and stone. It was carved by many years of hard hands and patient ideas. It is the long G rice fields, known by local people as the dragon's backbone. Its curves move across the mountainside like scales that shine with water, rice, and old pride. From far away, the fields look like a sleeping animal. Hills move with a steady beat. Each level goes up and down like the muscle of a living thing. But get closer, and you will find a thing that is even more alive. Water runs in soft sounds along channels that were dug with care. Young plants move in the wind, and at sunrise the morning fog covers the land like breath coming from the dragon's nose. These fields were not built quickly. Their story started more than 700 years ago. The Zhuang and Yao people, who are small groups with deep connections to the mountains, chose to control the slopes instead of leaving them. There was little flat land. There were no machines. And so they looked at the mountain and asked a basic question. How do we get food for ourselves here? The answer took many generations. With only stone tools and bamboo baskets, they carved the hills bit by bit, year after year. With each level they built, they not only changed the land, they taught it to breathe with them. Rain became a good thing. The slope became food. Rice, the main food of life, started to grow where gravity once was king. And after some time, the field started to look like a dragon at rest, strong forever and holy. This was more than farming. It was living together in a good way, a quiet deal between people and nature. No part of the mountain was thrown away, and no part was made to bend hard. Instead, the people worked with the earth. They shaped it in curves and rises, listening to the wind and following the water. Today, the dragon's backbone still feeds whole villages. But more than that, it reminds us what patience can build. In a world moving fast, here rests a dragon that was never hunted, only carved. Level by level, dream by dream. To walk among the long rice fields is to enter a world made by long effort. There is no trick here, no machine marks, no company signs. What covers these mountains are the signs of human strength. Every curve, every slope, every drop of water has been set, stone by stone, with hands that knew the beat of the land. Many years ago, when the Zhuang and Yao peoples first looked at these steep and hard hillsides, they did not see problems. They saw a chance. The flatlands were already taken. The good valleys were already planted. But up here, among the rough peaks, there was a possibility, if only they could make the earth listen. With no heavy tools, they began. They used wooden shovels, stone hoes, and baskets of mud and broken rock carried on backs, made tired by time. Slowly, fields began to appear, straight lines across the mountain, held up by stone walls put together by hand. These were not just random cuts into the slope. They were planned. Each level had to be perfectly straight, not only to hold water, but to move it from one level to the next without loss. One wrong step could make a whole part fall down. Too steep, and the water would run fast. Too flat, and it would sit still. So they measured not with tools, but with the feeling of many generations. Children learned from their parents. Parents watched the seasons. And the mountain, in time, gave in, not by giving up, but with trust. And the final product is a land that challenges nature by going with it. From the bottom of the valley to the peaks touched by clouds, these fields rise like a winding stair to the sky. They copy the shape of the land with grace, almost as if the mountain grew them itself. But no, the mountain did not make these curves. Humans did, with no engines, no cement, no building knowledge. Just time. Just trying and failing. Just the belief that land, no matter how steep, can be made to support life. Today, the fields are still used. They are still farmed, still fixed, still honored. No big machines, no easy ways. The old ways continue, not because they fight the future, but because they showed a rare thing. That old ways, when they are very deep, can last longer than any storm. If the dragon's backbone is muscle and bone, then water is its blood. It flows quietly without pumps or motors, following old channels that go from mountaintop springs into every field below. This water dance is not an accident. It is the secret life of the fields, the reason they have lasted for hundreds of years. At the top of the mountain, rainwater and natural springs are collected in small trenches and dirt canals. From there, gravity becomes the farmer's quiet helper. The water goes down through field after field. It pools softly in each one before pouring into the next. This design, smooth and unbroken, makes sure that every spot of rice gets what it needs. No more, no less. There are no pipes or buttons. Control comes from small gates made of stone or wood, moved by hand and habit. If one field has too much water, it could flood the next. If one leaks, a dry spell might come. And so the villagers who protect this careful system walk the edges every day. They check, they move things, they listen to the sound of the flow. It is less like farming and more like playing a music instrument. One wrong sound and the whole song is wrong. But the water does more than feed rice. It copies the sky. In spring, when the fields are first filled with water, the plots become like glass. They show the clouds, the sun, even the stars on a clear night. People who visit often say the view is strange, like the mountain has become a living mirror, showing both the sky and the earth. Then summer comes. The water gets thick with green stalks. The reflection goes away, replaced by motion. Moving rice plants sway in the wind like a green sea. In autumn, the water shines through the gold of ripe grain. And in winter, when farming stops, snow and frost take the place of the flowing water. The dragon sleeps, but the channels are still there, quiet lines waiting for spring. Time moves in a different way here, not by hours, but by wetness, by the first flow of mountain melt, by the sound of frogs coming back, by the smell of wet dirt. In a world that counts time in seconds, the people of Longji still count it in seasons and drops. And so the dragon lives not in fire and flight, but in waves of water, moving gently through a living work of art made of stone and soil. Spring in the Longji Mountains starts not with flowers, but with water. As the snow melts on the higher peaks, small rivers flow down, giving life to the waiting fields. The mirror-like plots are ready, the dragon moves, and the people get ready for the act that connects them to every past generation, planting the first seed. There is no big notice, only quiet motion. Farmers, young and old, get up with the fog. They walk with no shoes along the thin edges, straw hats low over their eyes, baskets held straight on their backs. The air is heavy with the smell of wet dirt and mountain wind. The plots, filled with water just days ago, now shine like smooth green stone. This is not a job for machines. It never has been. Each young rice plant, grown in special beds, is moved by hand, one by one, line by line. The workers step into the cold water and push the soft stalks into the mud with soft fingers. It is a pattern that feels almost holy. Back bent, arm out, hand push, repeat all day, sometimes for weeks. Children follow, playing in the shallow water, copying their parents. They learn not from books, but by standing in the water, feeling the push of the mud, and learning the space between plants by sight. This is how knowledge stays alive here, lived, not said. Planting is more than work. It is a special event. Gifts are given to the mountain spirits. Songs are sung. In some villages, older people throw the first handful of young plants as a good wish. Every field planted is a promise to the land, to the ancestors, and to the children who will come. The speed is not fast. No one hurries the dragon. No one races the mountain. Instead, the pattern of planting becomes a deep thought, a slow dance of human and nature, of patience and reason. And as the days go by, green shoots start to rise from the watery fields like soft words. From this moment on, the fields will grow, not just rice, but hope. Each seed is a prayer. Each row is a quiet stand against hunger and hurry. And so the cycle starts again, not with noise or fire, but with hands in mud and hearts in the sky. The dragon is awake, the mountain breathes, and the future is planted, one seed at a time. Found along the top lines of the hills and set in the bends of the fields are the heartbeats of the dragon's backbone, villages like Pingen, Dai, and Jingen. These are not just places to live. They are living displays of history where every home, path, and porch holds onto the mountain like a memory that will not go away. The houses are built from wood, They rest on posts to keep them safe from the rains and the steep hill. Their roofs, dark and angled, copy the lines of the fields they look over. From high up, they look like wooden lights floating on waves of green. Inside, life is plain, warm, and very shared. Many generations share one home. Food is cooked over wood fires. The smell of rice wine and bamboo smoke goes into the mountain air. The people here are from small ethnic groups, the Zhuang and the Red Yao. Each group has its own language, ways, and stories. You will know the Yao women right away. Their long black hair, never cut since they were children, is wound into nice shapes on top of their heads. Some let it fall like silk waterfalls when they wash in the river. A sight so pretty it is almost a myth. Even with new ways slowly coming up the mountain paths, old traditions stay strong. Clothes woven by hand and colored with a dark blue plant. Wooden machines for weaving making noise in quiet rooms. Music played on reed pipes and metal drums during village parties. Weddings still have special dances. The harvest is still greeted with song. Welcoming guests is not a business deal here. It is a natural act. Guests are given tea made from local leaves, rice wine in carved gourds, and stories told by older people who remember the mountain before electric power came. They talk of dragons in the fog, of ancestors who first carved the hills, of spirits who still watch over the fields. And even though visitors now come from all over the world, the pattern of village life goes on, mostly not bothered. The rice still grows. The special events still mark the seasons. The fields, like the people, last not by fighting change, but by taking it in slowly, with care, like water going down one level at a time. Here, inside the dragon's coils, life is not fast. It flows, it repeats, it remembers. To walk the fields of Longji is to walk through layers of myth. The hills are not just dirt and stone. They are alive with stories spoken quietly through bamboo trees and carried on the wind. For the villagers, these mountains are not just land. They are holy beings, shaped by gods, protected by spirits, and filled with tales passed from one generation to the next. The longest-lasting story tells of a sleeping dragon whose body covers the hills. Its back rises in coils, which are the fields themselves. Local people believe that the curves of the mountain are not made by people, but are the dragon's scales going up and down with its breath. When fog comes in from the valley and covers the plots in white, they say the dragon moves, breathing softly in its sleep. Another story tells of how the fields were created from the kindness of gods. In a time of no food, the ancestors climbed the mountains and prayed to the sky. Moved by their love, the gods sent rain and told them to carve the hills into steps so rice could grow. The people did as they were told, and the dragon came to guide their hands. Ever since, they have treated the mountain with honor, never yelling in the fields, never cutting trees without a prayer. These beliefs are not in books. They live in songs, sung during planting, in smoke from sticks burned before a new growing season, in the quiet kept during foggy mornings. Children grow up hearing these tales not as make-believe, but as truth set in the land. To laugh at the dragon is to risk a bad harvest. To treat the spirits with no honor is to ask for flood or dry weather. There are spirits in the water too. Some farmers still give gifts before letting the spring water into the fields for the first time each year. A few drops of rice wine, a prayer said quietly. Not for others to see, just a tradition as normal as tying a shoe. And whether you believe in dragons or not, a holy feeling is in the air. Maybe it is the quiet. Maybe it is the clouds. Or maybe it is the silent knowing that this place is more than human work. It is a story still being told, written not with ink, but with stone, water, and rice. For hundreds of years, the dragon's backbone was a secret held by the mountains, far away, quiet, and known only to the people who lived there. But no place, no matter how holy, stays untouched forever. The road came, then the wires. Tourists, cameras, and phones climbed the hills with the farmers. And the fields, old and worn, faced a question they never had to answer before. How do you last in the modern world? At first, people were worried. Some were afraid the mountain would be sold part by part to builders, that cement would replace wood, that culture would become a show. But the people of Long Jay did not just last. They changed, not by leaving the past, but by mixing the present into it, one careful string at a time. Villagers started to open their homes to visitors, not as hotels, but as family places to stay. Visitors eat local food, sticky rice cooked in bamboo, and wild plants picked that morning. They sleep in wooden houses on posts where chickens still call out the sunrise. The stay is not planned for a show. It is lived, true, and real. And the farming, it goes on. Each season, local people still flood the fields, still plant by hand, still cut the harvest with sharp tools worn smooth by time. Children go to school during the day, but help in the fields at sunset. Visitors may bring money, but rice brings life. One helps the other. Both are needed. Some young villagers have gone to the cities, but many come back. The fields have a pull, a feeling deeper than just missing home. It is the sound of water moving through the channels, the way the stars show in the plots, the way the mountains teach patience. Local parties have become louder. Yes, there are now microphones where there were once drums. Signs in Chinese and English stand next to holy springs. But the special events still happen. Gifts are still given. Older people still lead the songs. The dragon's backbone did not fight change. It took it in with grace and balance. The fields are still here, not because they are stuck in time, but because they breathe with time, bending, changing, but never breaking. In a time when old ways are often given up for new things, Long Jay stands as quiet proof that new ways can walk softly if they want. That the old ways still have a place in the modern world, especially when they are this beautiful. The dragon's backbone is never the same place 2 times. With every season, it changes its skin, its colors, and its feeling. While cities change over years, the fields change in weeks, covered not just in light, but in a pattern. To stand among them for a whole year is to see a mountain breathe. Spring comes like a mirror. The fields are filled with water to get ready for planting, and the still water shows the sky like silver glass. Clouds move not just above, but under your feet. Visitors talk about walking through the sky. The fields look empty, but they are full of possibility. Under the surface, life is moving. Summer brings a quick growth of green. The rice shoots grow tall and straight, covering the hills in a green waterfall. From far away, the fields look like strips of soft cloth rolling in all directions. The air is warm and wet. Frogs call from the plots. Farmers with water up to their knees work from sunrise to sunset, their hats moving like tiny boats on a green sea. Autumn is gold, the time of harvest. The rice is ready and the fields catch fire in the sunlight, shining with grain. The fields move in the wind and drums sound through the villages. Families come together. Songs are sung. Sticky rice is cooked. It is not just a season, it is a big party. The dragon, fully awake, gives its gifts. Winter makes the mountains still. The field is empty. The water is gone. Snow sometimes falls, covering the steps in soft white. Other times, frost holds onto the walls like a thin cloth. There are no tools in the field, no voices, only quiet. The dragon sleeps, resting, waiting. Each season writes a different poem. Spring shows, summer grows, autumn feeds, winter rests. The beauty of Longyi is not just in its shape, but in its cycle, in how it takes time without fighting, in how it changes quietly, never needing to be loud. Photographers follow the light here, hoping to catch a lasting image. But the fields do not stop for any person. They move, they breathe. They teach us softly that beauty is not still. It is a pattern, a practice, a promise made new with every season. And so the dragon turns again, not with a roar or fire, but with water, grain, and wind. In the end, the fields are more than fields. They are a promise, quiet, curved, and carved into the mountain. A promise passed from hand to hand, season to season, generation to generation. The dragon's backbone is not just a wonder of farming or a great work of building. It is the story of what happens when humans decide to live with the land, not against it. There were easier ways. The ancestors of Long could have gone to valleys, looked for flatter land, but they stayed. They looked closely at the slope, listened to the stone, followed the water. And by doing so, they made a hard thing normal, feeding villages on a mountainside. Every curve has a lesson, not just about rice, but about patience, about what we leave behind, about care. These fields were not built in years or even many decades. They took hundreds of years. There is no fast way to live in peace, no machine that can copy the knowledge cut into each stone wall by hard hands and quiet effort. And yet no part of them is stuck. The fields are alive. They change. They bend with the weather, with the needs of the people, with the shape of the world. That is their secret. They were never stiff. They were always moving. Even now, as the modern world climbs the hills with its signals and screens, the fields stay firm. They change, but they do not disappear because their roots are not just in soil. They are in story, in special events, in the simple, lasting act of planting a seed and trusting the sky. To walk the dragon's backbone is to see a deal between humans and the earth, a deal signed with sweat and sun, made new with every harvest. It is a reminder that moving forward does not always mean speed, and that being great does not always roar. Sometimes it speaks softly like a stream moving over stone. And maybe that is why the fields speak to so many people, from farmers to travelers to dreamers. Because they show what we have almost forgotten, that the most lasting things in this world are not built with force, but with a pattern, with modesty, and with time. The dragon sleeps, the people last, and the mountain remembers. Most visitors to Giza look up to the sky. They are pulled to the tall shapes of the pyramids and the look of the Great Sphinx. But few ask what is below, under the sand, under the Nile, under long years of forgotten river flows. For in the quiet, shallow waters near the old village of Abarash, just a small way from the Giza Plateau, a strange story moves. It tells of a huge thing, worn down and not noticed. An underwater sphinx. Local fishermen have talked quietly of it for generations. A shape with a smooth back that seems too perfect to be natural. A cat-like form half buried in mud and wet dirt. When the Nile's waters go down during dry times, parts of it appear. stone curves, lines, and what some people say is a carved paw, worn down beyond belief, but clearly shaped by hands. It is not on the tourist paths. There are no signs, no soft ropes, no tour buses waiting nearby. Just a place thick with tall grass, salty water, and quiet. Explorers who went there say the land itself feels different, full of energy, as if memory holds on to it. Under the dark water, sonar scans have found geometric shapes and what look like blocks put there on purpose. But what really surprises are the statements that this figure, a sphinx-like shape under the water near Giza, may be older than the pyramids, not by a few decades, but by thousands of years. If true, it would break the known order of Egyptian history. The main timeline puts the Great Sphinx at around 2500 BC. But this underwater form, if it was really carved, could be from a time when the Sahara was still green and the Nile ran free through a wetter, richer land. Doubters, of course, say it is just a rock formation seen wrongly. Limestone shaped by water and hopeful thoughts. But the lines, the curves, the position with stars in the sky, it all brings more questions than answers. The place has not been dug up. Official diggers have mostly not looked at it. Maybe it is a small thing, maybe it is a huge thing. A piece of the past not just of Egypt, but of a world lost to flood and time. For now, the so-called underwater Sphinx lies quiet, not sleeping, but waiting. And if it could talk, one wonders what secrets it would tell, and why so many people seem set on not listening. The story of the underwater Sphinx went from quiet local tales to world curiosity in the 1980s. That is when a few free researchers and divers started to share strange reports. Stories of a massive lion-bodied figure partly underwater near the Giza Plateau. Early pictures were blurry, not clear, and often ignored. But they started a feeling that could not be stopped. Curiosity and, more risky, doubt. One of the loudest early supporters was a hobby Egypt expert who said he saw a worn monument deep under silt and flood layers during a short, dry period. According to him, the figure was not a single rock or a trick of wear. It had shape, legs, balance, even a weak hint of a carved face. Of course, this went against the usual story. Egyptology as a field is built on structure and known timelines. Most experts place the building of the Giza pyramids and the Great Sphinx around 2500 BCE during the rule of Pharaoh Khafra. The idea of another Sphinx, older and partly underwater, would mean rethinking not just Egyptian history, but the timeline of human existence itself. Mainstream experts answered with care, even scorn. Without an excavation checked by others, carbon dating, or studies of dirt layers, the claim could not be taken as real. Many said the so-called underwater Sphinx was probably a natural shape. Limestone worn by thousands of years of Nile flooding and dirt movement. In Egypt, they said, nature often copies what is planned. Wind, water, and time are skilled artists. But the pictures kept being shared. The sonar tests continued to show odd shapes, too straight, too smooth, too full of meaning. And then came the theorists. Writers, filmmakers, and outside historians started building stories around the mystery. That the Sphinx was a relic of a lost people, maybe Atlantean, maybe from before the pharaohs of Egypt, lost in a flood that washed the Sahara clean. They pointed to water-wear patterns on the original Great Sphinx, argued for lost machines, and suggested that what was under the Nile might be much older than our known memory allows. The talk grew louder, but the ground stayed still. No official dig was started. No museum took it, and the Sphinx, if that is what it is, stayed right where it always had been, buried in silt, caught between story and mud. The idea that a thing near Giza might be older than the pyramids is not just bold. It is a complete change. If the underwater Sphinx is more than wear or chance, then Egypt's story did not start in the 4th dynasty. It started before it, deep in a time before history, when the Sahara was a green field and the Nile moved wider, wilder, and less easy to predict. This idea became stronger in the 1990s when geologist Dr. Robert Schoch studied the Great Sphinx itself. He argued that the deep straight lines of wear on the Sphinx's wall were not made by wind and sand, but by rain, heavy and long ancient rain, which had not touched the Giza Plateau since at least 7000 BCEI. That pushed the possible date of the Sphinx back by thousands of years, well before the first pharaohs carved names into stone. If water shaped the original Sphinx, could water also have hidden an even older brother or sister? The so-called underwater Sphinx sits in a lower area near old floodplains. Some satellite pictures and ground scanning radar suggest possible bases, square shapes, and careful shaping, all buried under silt and seasonal water. These signs suggest that the site may not just be older than the Sphinx. It may come from a time when no writing in Egypt was yet in special symbols. Supporters of the idea point to Egypt's missing parts, the time between the end of the Ice Age and the start of the first dynasties. During this time, the Nile changed its path. The Sahara changed from wet grasslands to dry desert, and groups of people may have grown and fallen, not recorded and wiped away. The idea that an ancient people, with no writing and before the pharaohs, could have shaped a monument of this size seems unlikely to traditional historians. But is it? Göbekli Tepe in Turkey was built around 9600 BCEI by people who hunted and gathered. It has huge pillars with carved animals made thousands of years before Stonehenge. Could Egypt hold a similar secret? An ancient culture that marked the land with stone long before papyrus paper carried their stories. If the underwater Sphinx was built in such a time, it would change all we know about human history. It would suggest not just lost ruins, but a lost age. One that may have spoken quietly to the builders of Giza, leaving behind more than a story, perhaps a monument that was drowned, then forgotten. Stone does not tell lies. It remembers. And around the place of the so-called underwater Sphinx, it tells a quiet but steady story, not just of time, but of water. Dirt layers, wear marks, and flood patterns suggest a history long before the desert became dry, long before the Nile stayed on its known path, long before the pharaohs carved their names into history. Geologists who have looked at pictures and information from the site near Abu Rash see strange wear marks, smooth, round lines that suggest long contact with flowing water. Not wind, not sand, but rain and movement, forces that have been gone from this area for thousands of years. Similar points have been made about the Great Sphinx itself, especially its surrounding wall. Those who doubt the standard timeline point out that the deep straight cuts seen on the Sphinx's nearby trench do not look like wind wear at all. They copy rainfall, heavy and long prehistoric rain. Now at the possible underwater Sphinx site, we see the same mark, only this time hidden under a shallow flood area. During times of low Nile flow or digging, parts of the structure are said to come into view. Lion-like backs, shoulders, and a base that seems too flat to be natural. Researchers who have studied the area note that the basin is geologically busy, with a lot of clay and signs of ancient water levels changing hard. The stone there is very worn, but not in a random way. The wear follows the shape of the structure itself, flowing in lines that suggest careful carving, then drowning. Some dirt layers around the site are from the early Holocene period, when Egypt was wetter, greener, and often had huge floods. If a monument had been carved then, it could have stood for hundreds of years before being swallowed by mud, forgotten by moving peoples, and buried under the Nile's wandering silt. Doubters say this is all chance, natural shapes made into a story by hopeful eyes. But water does not make balanced shapes. It does not carve paws. It does not create aligned bases or copy the shape of a known sphinx just a few miles away. So the question gets deeper. If water wiped this monument from sight, what other things has it taken with it? And more pressing, how much of history still lies hidden under the surface? If the underwater sphinx is really there, quiet, carved and ancient, why has it not been dug up? Why does it stay under layers of mud and silence, missed by archaeologists, not looked at by governments, and left to the river flows? The answer, like the object itself, is under the surface. Egypt's groups that study ancient things are protective, and they have a right to be. The nation guards its old history with firm rules, strict digging laws, and a demand for group agreement. Digging up any place, especially one that challenges the usual timeline, needs papers, money, world oversight, and most important, approval from the main group. And that approval often depends on one quiet rule: do not change Egypt's history without a mountain of proof that cannot be denied. And that is the problem. The so-called underwater Sphinx has never had an official dig paid for by the state. Free researchers, foreign experts, and outside thinkers have studied the area. But without formal support, their findings are just stories, suggesting things, but not proving them. There is also the problem of the Nile itself. The river is not a still thing. It floods, goes down, and moves over decades. The place where the monument supposedly rests is prone to floods, often underwater for much of the year. Digging would mean draining the area, moving water, protecting nearby life, and fixing structural harm caused by hundreds of years of dirt pressure. That alone would take years, maybe even many decades. Then there are political reasons. A find of this size, if proven, would upset more than school timelines. It could challenge known stories, bother national pride, and bring a storm of media that Egypt might not want to have. The Ministry of Antiquities likes to show finds that make Egypt seem grand, not ones that question its basic history. Some people whisper that certain groups may already know more than they say, that small studies have been done quietly behind closed doors. But without public papers, checked findings, or government news, these claims become just talk. And so the monument stays buried. Whether by chance or by plan, it sleeps under mud and doubt. It is a strange thing that in a land that is all about saving its ancient past, one of its biggest mysteries may be hidden in clear view, not claimed, not studied, and not touched by time's official story. But no buried thing stays buried forever. To the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx was more than a statue. It was a sign, part protector, part god, part mystery. With the body of a lion and the head of a man, the Sphinx stood for strength mixed with wisdom, body power controlled by a royal mind. It was a guard for the universe placed at doorways where the world of gods met the world of people. The most famous, of course, is the Great Sphinx of Giza. Standing 66 feet high, it has guarded the plateau for over 4,000 years. It faces the rising sun, watching over the tombs of pharaohs. Its true beginning is still argued. Some say Khafra built it. Others say it may be much older, its face carved again over time. So what would it mean if a second Sphinx, hidden, worn by water, and possibly older, is just miles away? It would change everything. No known writings talk of two sphinxes at Giza. Old texts are quiet, but in later Greek and Roman tradition there are talks of guardians placed in balance on both sides of holy spaces. In Egyptian building, balance is holy. Temples often have two statues, two tall stone points, two rows of lions. Why not two sphinxes? Some researchers say that the so-called underwater sphinx might not be a copy, but the first one, a test model, a version from before the pharaohs that was later copied on a bigger scale. If true, it suggests that the idea of the Sphinx came not from the pharaoh builders, but from a lost culture whose stories were carried on, taken, and made better. And if the monument is older than writing, it may not be tied to the pharaoh's ideas at all. Its purpose could have been for the stars, for special events, or even to remember. It could mark an event, a flood, or a forgotten god. The lion shape itself is not by chance. In ancient Egypt, lions stood for the line where the sky meets the earth, the gate of sunrise and sunset. A sphinx facing east watches the rebirth of the sun forever. To carve one was to freeze that holy act in stone. Now think of one carved before the pyramids, placed in line, guarding, waiting. It would not just rewrite history. It would change the very story of Egypt itself, not as the start of human community, but as the last sound of a thing even older. And the fact that this sign might be sleeping underwater is even more right for a guardian of lost worlds. As quiet talk of the underwater Sphinx spreads further across the world, a silent split has formed. It runs deeper than dirt or stone. On one side is traditional Egyptology, careful, ordered, and based on what experts agree on. On the other, a growing group of free researchers, different historians, and curious people who believe a special thing is being missed. Mainstream experts demand proof, studies checked by others, dirt layers, writings, and carbon dating. Their worry is not for no reason. Egypt is full of natural rock shapes that look like human or animal forms, and seeing them wrongly can lead to false news. Digging, after all, must be careful. The past is weak. It cannot be rebuilt once it is broken by careless hands or media excitement. But to others, being careful has become being lazy. Free investigators, many of them trained scientists or engineers from outside the field, argue that the underwater Sphinx and similar strange things need a deeper look. They point to high-quality satellite pictures that show unnatural balance, to LiDAR scans that find square bases under layers of mud, to wear patterns that seem shaped not by mess, but by a plan. They also question the political reasons for the silence. Tourist money comes from well-known monuments. A new Sphinx, especially one that threatens the accepted timeline, could upset Egypt's story and power. The fear, they suggest, is not of a fake, but of rewriting everything. Books, shows, podcasts, and meetings now often talk about the underwater Sphinx. It has become a sign of hidden history, used as both a call to action and a story of warning. Supporters call for an open dig. Doubters warn against fake science. The truth, as always, is lost in the middle, buried under voices as thick as the Nile silt. The split is not just about school, it is about feelings. It speaks to how we look at the past. Do we trust only what has been proven, or do we follow the clues left just out of reach? The underwater Sphinx forces that question into the open. It is not just a rock or a relic. It is a test for how curious we are allowed to be. And as long as it stays not dug up, both sides will keep arguing above a monument that says nothing, yet might change everything. There is a haunting feeling about a mystery buried in plain sight, especially when it has the face of a lion and looks up from the mud with ancient silence. The so-called underwater Sphinx near Giza may or may not be real, but its pull cannot be denied. It moves a feeling in us, a wish not just to find, but to remember. Because deep down, the story of a forgotten monument connects to a feeling older than digging, the human feeling of loss. We have always lived next to ruins. Cities fall, languages die, groups of people disappear under waves, sand, and ash. We look to the past not just for answers, but for who we are. Who were we? How far back do our stories go? And what have we forgotten in our hurry to move forward? If the underwater Sphinx is real, if it was carved by hands before written history, it becomes more than a relic. It becomes a voice from a part of the story we did not know was there. A marker from a time when people may have understood the stars in a different way, honored the earth more closely, or had a mythology we can only guess at. Some believe it belongs to a smart prehistoric culture lost to a world disaster, a theory often called fringe. But whether or not that is true, the emotional weight is still there. To imagine a monument carved long before the pyramids, covered by rising waters and then erased, is to face how weak human community truly is. And maybe that is why the story continues. It reminds us that time is not a straight line, that great nations are not forever, that even stone can disappear if the river flows long enough. But more important, it reminds us that finding things is not over, that Earth still holds secrets not written in school books. In a time defined by quick answers and world data, the underwater Sphinx is a rare thing, an unanswered question, a possibility, a mystery not yet solved by drones or computer programs. And whether it turns out to be natural rock or a forgotten monument, it already has value because it makes us wonder. Wonder if the past is deeper than we thought. Wonder if myths hold memory. Wonder what lies just under the surface, waiting for a person to listen. The underwater Sphinx of Giza, whether carved or by chance, confirmed or not, stays where it has always been, under the surface, under the mud, the water, the weight of time. It has no sign, no name, no bright light. And yet it speaks softly in the lack of answers. For every monument we have dug up in Egypt, there are others still buried, still waiting. Some are too weak to bring out. Others are lost to the moving Nile, drowned under layers of silt and secrecy. And a few, like this one, sit in plain view, not noticed, not because they are not important, but because they ask questions we are not yet ready to answer. Maybe that is what makes the underwater Sphinx so strong. Not its size, not its age, but its silence. It makes us face the edges of what we know and the uncomfortable feeling of what we might have missed. In truth, it may never be dug up. Politics, money, and tradition make walls taller than any tomb. But that does not mean it is not important, just the opposite. The monument's very hidden nature has turned it into a mirror, showing not just what lies buried, but what we choose to remember and what we choose to forget. It also reminds us that history is not a closed book. It is a living puzzle spread across lands and shores, waiting for a change in the water, a change in thinking, or a brave question to move the dust. Maybe one day the water will go down and the full shape will rise, paws, face, and all. Maybe radar will confirm what stories have long thought. Or maybe the mystery will stay, passed from one generation to the next, like a quiet word between stones. But whether it is a monument or a trick of sight, the underwater Sphinx already does its greatest job. It moves the imagination. And in a world full of certainty, that may be its greatest gift. Because maybe the most ancient things are not just buried in sand or time. Maybe they are buried in us, in our need to explore, to remember, and to believe that somewhere out there, under waves or desert, the past still breathes and still waits to be found.